It's Luke Skytalker here.
We lived in freedom beneath the southern sky. Spoke our minds and asked the reason why. But now they demand, prove who you are. They call it safety, but they've gone too far. For every click, a record's made, a profile built, a voice betrayed. There go Australia. Oh, the gatekeeper screen is bright, but behind the machine they steal our rights. Your name, your age, your every stand in Australia, where freedom's now banned. Freedom's banned. Freedom's banned. Oh. They say it's for the children to keep us all safe, but this brutal path leads to the darkest place. A global line behind each door, counting voices, keeping score. They say protect, but they mean control. They claim your screen, they claim your soul. Fair go Australia. Oh, the gatekeeper screen is bright, but behind the light is a dark, dark night. Your thoughts are tagged, your speech is scanned in Australia, where freedom's now banned. Mama, I can't log in. Papa, they said I'm too young to begin. Mama, freedom's fading fast. They've locked the gate and wiped our past. There go Australia. I see a little silhouette on the screen. Government global scheme ID in between facial scan and thunder. Very, very frightening me. I see through the very city. Luke Skywalker, will you fight for liberty? Yes, I will. Yes, he will. Stand tall, stand free. There go Australia. There go Australia. Rise before the ID gate falls. Stand for access, stand for all. From the outback plains to Parliament Hall, freedom's voice must not fall. There go Australia. The truth must call. Don't trade your voice for a promise of peace. Freedom, once lost, is never easily released. Keep the gate open. Keep the gate open. Forever and ever. There go Australia. There go Australia. There go Australia.
So that's a new song by Sigmund Torbert, and using AI
Yeah,
for the
great
music.
song.
Yeah,
Great
what's
song.
interesting, I think he's probably late 60s, early 70s. And so that's what I love. You know, that's everyone's in, everyone's getting in, and everyone's getting into it. How are we going, you two? So, John, I'll get you in a sec. How about you, Paul? How have you been in this? What's wrong with my hair? How have you been in this since New Year and all this stuff and the digital ID coming out? Because I know that.
I'm going really well. That's important, isn't it? I mean, the year's fairly young, and good evening, gentlemen. Look, I think there's a lot of opportunity ahead of us as there is risk this year. I think a lot of people are waking up to things and maybe understanding that this whole freedom thing that people keep rabbiting on about maybe does have some legs, and there are reasons why people have spilled blood for it over the past generations, and responsibility. And I'm sure we'll get into all of this, but the particular avenue that we're facing at the moment, with the social media ban and the incursion into the family decision, I think maybe is one of those it's so bad it's good things, because parents in particular are having to really ask some pretty fundamental questions about their role, and so that's a really interesting area for me, and I'm happy to tackle the new year. So yeah, sure,
we should talk about it in a second. Go ahead, John.
So it's supposed to roll out in 2026. So how is the average Australian citizen going to experience this? It's meant to be the full rollout of what is called the Trusted Digital Identity Framework, which facilitates the Digital ID Act of 2024. So is that right? How is that going to change everybody's lives in the country when we get this full rollout? Or are they completely incompetent in everything and nobody's going to notice, and it's going to be like the vape bans and the legal cigarettes and everything? People will just find their way around it, like all the kids have just done with social media bans. What's going to happen?
I think that's one of those perfect question and answer all in ones, isn't it, John? Yeah, and we saw that recently with the December 10 date. I had people reaching out to me saying, I have to get my entire life off the internet before December 10 because I won't be able to access anything. And the experience of many people across the country was absolutely nothing. And other people felt kind of different touch points, and it was a real eclectic experience, wasn't it? So I don't think anyone knows, including those who are actually, pushing this legislation, because the implementation is a very different thing to that which is written in an act, isn't it? So
they've made this law like banning vapes, which has made absolutely zero difference. You can buy a vape in any suburb in the country. So what's going to happen?
Machete bin.
I had to do my ID. Anything, yeah.
Machete bin. Never forget that. That's like the highlight of the year.
Has anybody ever put a machete in one of those bins? I bet you not one machete has ever gone.
I heard the Somalians use them like an ATM. That's where they get them from.
They're so expensive you wouldn't want to scratch them either, right?
That's right. Yeah. Not cheap. Times are hard. But
it's old enough to remember the Australia card in the 80s. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah, but the Constitution saved us there, a constitutional lawyer. But there wasn't that right? Wasn't it some guy found something, a legal term or something, and they couldn't do it because of that?
Oh, gosh.
That was part of those protests.
Basically so unpopular, they abandoned it, as I understand it.
Yeah.
I remember doing stories on it at the time.
Yeah. That was the Australia card you're talking about? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was huge.
It was. That was the final nail in the coffin, actually. It was a kind of a formality. There was some, kind of paraphrasing here, but there was some reference to a start date that wasn't defined or couldn't be defined. So it was some sort of legislative glitch at the end that was the final nail. But yeah, I mean, it was.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Big campaign against it.
Small things.
Sometimes the little things, right? The straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah,
it's hard to
believe. There was huge protest at the time, and really unpopular. Sorry, John.
Really unpopular.
Yeah, and it came in late.
Were you working then, John?
Yeah, I had to go and do stories on it. One story I did, which was really interesting, because these things have real side effects, and this has been a problem that's plagued Australian agriculture ever since, for instance, is there was a huge tribe of itinerants that would travel the country picking tomatoes and in the north, in Queensland, and asparagus in Victoria, and on, really tough, rotten, hard work. They'd all arrive in each town. They all had kids, they had caravans, they spent a lot of money in town, and it was an open secret that they were also on the dole at the same time. But they were a huge support to these country towns, and all the farmers absolutely relied on them. And they were very clear that if one of the justifications, the same as today, was that, it'll stop fraud, so it'll stop social security fraud. And they said, if you stop us doing that, this is a tough life. We're all living on the road. If you're going to do that, we'll just back up and go and live on the dole like everybody else, which is exactly what ended up happening. And there's been problems with people getting workers in farms ever since. And they had this band that had been there for generations. Kids had grown up on the road for generations. They were like Australian gypsies, basically. And they were rough and ready and filled up the local pubs wherever they went. And there you go. And that was all. That was the early versions of digital ID. It had that strange effect, you know, that of destroying what had been an intrinsic part of Australian life and culture for generations, and had been hugely integrated into the way farms operated. Now they're hiring backpackers who, you know, are there for a season and off and don't know what they're doing, and on and on and on. The difficulties have just, you know, destroyed a lot of farms. A lot of farmers have just, you know, mowed in their crops. Or
that's fascinating, John. Have you still got that story? That's a fascinating.
Yeah, it was on the front page on the Sydney Morning Herald on the weekend, which is the prime spot. And with a really famous photographer of the era called Rick Stevens, beautiful photographer, and I had this beautiful shot of people bent over in the fields like something, a Whistler painting or something, beautiful shot. And it caused a huge fuss, and that was another factor in the paper was against it. Everybody was against the damn thing. So how have we got, Paul, to this point where people seem to be accepting it? Is it just that the population is news averse, that they don't understand what's happening, that they don't really know about it?
So I've devoted a lot of thought to this. I mean, there's probably many answers to that. There's an attrition of judgment, isn't there? And we've seen that in many areas. And what we're talking about here is a compliance architecture, you know, whether it's related to identification or anything else. And, you know, compliance architectures, I mean, they're systems designed to regulate behavior without really requiring judgment. It removes personal judgment relationships from the equation. And we've just become happy with that. And this is just one hair to the hydra, isn't it, that pops up when we abdicate our own ability to think through things and determine what's right and wrong on the ground, within the family, within the community. And we just send this kind of up to those behind mahogany desks to decide, and all sorts of complex systems, as you described, start to break. So I think we need to, you know, we see the manifestations at the big end, at the national level, but I think the roots of it are very much close to home. And I hope that's where people are starting to kind of wake up a little bit, is that, you know, I have to take sovereignty over my own life and my own immediate relationships, and determine my own risk tolerance for things, and steward my own life a little bit. So that's kind of where my thinking is on the moment.
Yeah. Is it really that every freedom's been eroded inch by inch, so we've just become accustomed to it, basically, that we're now used to the fact that we're under total surveillance? Everybody knows that now, that the war for privacy has been lost. So is it partly that?
Yeah, so that's the boiling frog thing, isn't it? And you know, maybe we're so far removed from what was required to earn our freedoms that we're not educated in what's required to persist them. And there are different skill sets. You know, we hear a lot of the kind of revolutionary phases that civilizations go through, and there are movies kind of made about it, and literature and all of this stuff. But the boring work in between revolutions of just maintaining freedom, I mean, that's a skill set that's not really written about much, or there aren't many movies. It's boring work. It's every little decision where you refuse to do something that would be convenient or would, you know, expedite something that you're trying to do, but it clashes with a principle of yours. And so we need to become educated in what's required to maintain what's been gifted to us, because it's not just pitchforks and, you know, kind of revolutionary stuff. There are phases in between, and we happen to be born in one of those phases where we've been gifted something, the value of which we don't comprehend. And, you know, the generations after us will have to deal with the decisions we're making now. So, yeah, the boring work. I think it's the boring work of just maintaining the standards on the ground, despite and maybe even because of the inconveniences that they throw in front of us.
I think it's partly also the lackluster state of the media, that much of the media is now government controlled, and so they haven't spoken out. So when in what year was it? In the early 2000s sometime, First of all, Tony Abbott introduced a legislation, and then Malcolm Turnbull made it law that all journalists are persons of interest under the ASIO Act. Now, where was the upcry? I mean, that's just outrageous in itself. Every journalist in the country is legally a person of interest under the ASIO Act. Now, that's just outrageous legislation. There's also a thing called the Journalist Information Warrant, which means they can monitor everything you do, back years, everything. Everything you do, any journalist does, can be completely monitored and tracked. Don't for a moment think you're not tracked, Michael. And where was the outrage? And if you reported the fact that you were the subject of a Journalist Information Warrant, that is 2 years jail. If you acquire a suspicion that you may be the subject of a Journalist Information Act and you publish that fact, that's 2 years jail. What the heck?
What you're saying is if I discovered that I was being monitored and I published that.
If you were the subject of what's called a Journalist Information Warrant. This was introduced
and how does that work? What did they bring that in for? What was the motivation behind bringing that in? Did they say, or they just brought it in?
Oh, hang on. I wrote a story about this quite some time ago. 2019, I wrote this. And it was that period Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison. And I asked, will future historians see the Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison era as the period of governance when totalitarian instincts were unleashed? The targeting of journalists is just the beginning of a much greater disaster. The Right to Know movement barely touches on the intensity of media manipulation by the Conservatives since they regained power in 2013, from blocking popular Facebook sites to harassing little red authors. Imagine you're writing something, and away I go. But hang on, I'll just find that bit every single time.
We should publish that, John. Republish
Sorry?
it. Are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to republish that if you wrote it for a paper?
Yeah, this was published on Michael West, who's one of the leading independent investigative journalists in the country. And, he's got lawyers, and we always had good lawyers wherever I worked. News Limited had some of the best media lawyers in the country. And there were various outcries about it. Journalist information warrants are issued entirely in secret. Journalists are not informed if a warrant is taken out against them and face jail if they publicise the fact. The laws have become so strict that journalists cannot write about security operations. They cannot even write about their own surveillance, or if they report that they are being surveilled, they can also be faced jail. So that's why you'll find in my books that there's a sort of they drift off into a sort of kind of novelistic technique at various points, and that's a response to that.
Does that protect you from that sort of? Because that's what Paul did, didn't you? Your first novel, Paul, was written from a novelistic point of view.
Yeah, well, certainly a human one. Yeah. Lots of facts and research, but I wanted to bring the human story to what we're going through right now. And look, what we're talking about here is the natural end state of power, isn't it? When power centralizes, of course it's going to be used. Power is the perfect drug, isn't it? It's unavoidable regardless of who you are. And we all like to think that we pigeonhole ourselves as the person who wouldn't use it, but it's just a matter of time, isn't it? So,
John, do you think that's where the decline in journalism started, with that act?
No. It began decades before with the sort of commercialization. There's what's the damn book called? My brain's not working. But it started decades before with basically the commodification of it, that once upon a time every small town had its own newspaper, and all the miscreants and local drunks and car thieves and whatever would make the paper, and some of those stories would end up in the city papers, and so on and so on. So there was all the local courts were reported and so on. And now most of them are just filled with regurgitated press releases from governments or corporates, and it's completely collapsed. It's also partly a financial thing. It's to employ a journalist now is expensive, whereas to regurgitate a press release costs next to nothing. And that, of course, is why the 1.2 billion. Yeah, That's why the $1.2 billion ABC, the government's propaganda wing, regurgitates the CNN and the BBC and NPR and all the rest of them. It's cheap copy. It fills hours and hours of copy. It costs virtually nothing. Imagine if that $1.2 billion the ABC gets every year, you gave $1 million to the top 1,200 news outlets in the country. What would you do with $1 million, Michael?
I get a toilet in my bus.
Wow.
I hear a load of trees all around Australia going, please give them a toilet.
The last thing they want is a vibrant, independent media, for God's sake. The last thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? No, but no, I don't think we are straying because there's some other major journalists who are like you, John. There's one in Perth, Jerry. I can't remember his second name. He was with the West Australian for years. He's like you. It'd be interesting to bring old journalists on to talk about what happened. How did we lose journalism? Where, because I remember a point where you'd get on a bus or a tram or a train and it'd be just full of newspapers because everyone read it. I know it's online stuff, but it's different now. The articles were different. But anyway, let's get back. Before we go on, I'll start to what we're doing here tonight. So Paul wrote a book and we were promoting it on our site. And do you want to tell us about the book, Paul?
Yeah, it's called Citizen One, The Case Against Digital Identity. It's quite a few years of research in that. It's born from the digital enforcement that we saw roll out during the last half decade. And I combine both my engineering background and kind of produce technical warnings, but also incorporate some of my family history. I've got German heritage and parts of my family lived through 1930s and 1940s Germany, and I brought very much the human story. What does it actually feel like when identification defines your lived experience on the street? So I weave my family history through. This is the well-trodden path that we're starting to walk down. So we didn't need just another textbook. We needed something that actually kind of gave you the goosebumps a little bit. So hopefully I've achieved that.
Yeah, cool. And it's and so John was the one who instigated my novel Goodbye Road. He came up and said you should put them together, and edited them. Did a brilliant job. But he was pushing me right up to the heart attack where I think I was going to die, and so he gave us the idea for that. And then he's got his books here because he's got his own publishing company, A Sense of Place Publishing. But what we thought was, the Cafe Lockdown community is people. This is our literature. So John's got these books here on here. They've been selling too, but the Australia has changed, or the publishing has changed. Getting a publisher who's going to publish you, market you without the stuff that we're writing is probably never going to happen. So, but we can market them. So if you're out there and if you've written a book or you want to write a book about, say, the current 5 years or the state of the country, a book that publishers won't look at, but you want to write it. Well, at the moment, we've got John here who can edit it for you. So you can talk to John and figure out a cost for editing it. He does a brilliant job. And then you've got a book that's going to last forever. And then what we're saying is we market those books. We take 10% of marketing if they sell. And then what I've been doing is I'll get this down. So if a sale comes in, and sales have been coming in, I send the order to Paul or John, whoever's got it, with the money from the mailing, and then they sign the book. So it's they get to sign the book. So it's a historic, it has more value now because it's signed.
Jack Boots book, which you had up. That Jack Boots book that you had up is a really interesting case. I had it up a minute ago. If you looked at that cover, see on the right-hand side where I am. And she contacted me completely out of the blue, and she's an elderly lady and she's got terminal cancer and a lovely person. And she wrote this book about being a grandmother during the COVID era. And her thesis essentially was that why it was so bad in Australia, like we had one of the worst responses or the worst response in the world, depending on who you talk to, that why it was so bad here was that we collectively as a society forgot the wisdom of the grandmothers. We forgot the ancient spirits and the ancient ancient traditional ways, and out of the blue, we took some months of work to get there, but it came up with that. It's actually a really lovely book, and she's got a new one coming out shortly.
That's beautiful. You know, there's a load of grandmothers here, John. There's a huge amount of grandmothers in the movement, and they've been remarkable in the movement. But they've been instead of being listened to, they've been beaten up. They've been pepper sprayed, by young men dressed as police officers, smashing them to the ground and pepper spraying them. And we sort of forget it. But if you actually take the vision, make it black and white, you could stick it in Schindler's List, it'd fit. You know what I mean?
So much for respect your elders, hey? The wisdom of the past.
And
don't need any of that.
I remember in Melbourne, the police, after we had all this vision of the police beating all these Victorians up, viciously beating them up, including that guy they power drived into the floor of Flinders Street Station. Then they came out with a thing saying violence against women is wrong. And they had these police officers, things saying violence. So we put a video, and it was just police beating up women and the police commissioner going, violence against women is wrong. They can't see it. That's the extraordinary thing. They don't see any issue with it. And it's, I actually met that woman. So I think I'm the only journalist in Australia who's actually talked to her. And what she said was remarkable, because they came out and said that she was a man dressed up. That was the story they put to try to get off the hook, and people bought it. But what she actually said to me was, I said to her, is the reason you ran away, and she was wearing the Australian flag as a superhero cape, and she's a big woman. I said, is the reason you didn't run away because you took it for granted that the Australian police would not hurt a grandmother? And she said, that's exactly what I thought. So she stood there. The others ran away, but she stood there. I'm in my 70s. They won't harm me. And they did.
It's an extraordinary story. It was an extraordinary photograph. It went right around the world, that photograph. Yeah. It was just unbelievable. Pepper spraying that poor 70-year-old woman. No about this far from her face. It's a wonder she didn't have a heart attack.
It's a bit like our Tank Man moment, isn't it? The Tiananmen Square Tank Man moment. One photo can just capture the zeitgeist in era, and
Do you think that's one reason why Albo is having so much trouble flogging all these endless things like the social media ban and his response to the terror attacks in Bondi and so forth? There's a huge sort of latent or silent resistance somehow to
there is.
Because the government has just lied once too often. They've lied to us about terror. They've lied to us about COVID. They've lied to us about climate.
Sorry to interrupt you, but look at this. I'll come back to that picture, actually.
Amazing.
But that was at the shrine. But this shows the Australia's gone. Here's us thinking, hey, we don't like what you're doing. We've got the right to protest. And here are the police, these ones in the black. They're the ones that should have been at the Bondi. And here they are here. I mean, there was horses. There was an army against us. The shrine was besieged by our own people, and people said they were from overseas. But Damien and a lot of the protesters talked to them reasoning they were Victorians. One of them's actually reached out to me, who was a part of the group that did the shooting, and said he claims he wasn't there that day, but he says we're Victorians. They were Victorian police officers shooting their own people because they didn't want to take a vaccination. It's extraordinary. That's why the work that you guys are doing is so important, because the other thing too, this is what I'm trying to get home to people. I was telling Dr. Phil Altman, is I believe they have a law now that they can go back through your Substack posts and other things and reword it. I can't believe they have that law, but they can reword it. That's real now. I still can't get over what John said about the journalist laws, but they have that. So if you really want to capture history now and I'll protect history, then it's books. Malcolm Roberts said that. We have to get back to books because they're not going to be able to go back and rewrite all of Paul's books and republish them and get them into people's hands. Hi, sorry, we just thought there's the new one. They're not going to be able to do it, but they're memory holding as we speak. That's
the
what they
parchment
wanna
is
do.
the ultimate act of resistance, isn't it? And it's
Yeah, it's
distributed,
strange.
That's right.
Isn't it?
hidden under mattresses. It's just it's timeless. It's elegantly timeless
You
in
can
a
see the
way,
priest
isn't
at the door. Hide the books. Hide the books.
it?
Yeah.
And
So
it's
all
it's also the ultimate long form format, isn't it? You know, people engage with
Yes.
long form interviews and sit there for hours in an interview, but a book takes a lot of research and structured thinking, and you know, it's a relationship. It's like sitting across from the table with a glass of wine with the author, you know, for 6 hours or however long it takes to read, and you get to have a bit of an experience inside their mind, and it's a really quite a unique and novel format. I find that is not trivial to throw together in a very throwaway, trivial, short attention span era. It's got a certain draw to it that's romantic and functional. So, yeah, I see a big comeback.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
I also
well-
think I was talking to John. I also think people don't always think if we say a novel, you've got to write a really big book. Maybe do like with the old Westerns, you know, a 10,000, 20,000 word book that is about a particular incident that you went through in the last few years. Might not even be COVID related. There's so many other things happening on the farms and everywhere. There's just corruption everywhere that if you've experienced something like that, I mean, there's one guy in South Australia. He'd be great to write one. He was arrested and he's been pulled through the courts now for like 4 years. And what he was doing, he was going up and sticking other QR codes over the logging QR codes that went to a page that told you why you shouldn't get the vaccination. That's all he did. And he's been tormented ever since. So I'm just going to put up yeah.
Yeah, and since while you're doing that, since we're hoping to encourage writers here, there's another component to writing a book that maybe isn't as widely considered, because you think, oh, the process of writing a book is me communicating with the outside world. But I don't think you're ever really the same person that finishes a book as the one that started writing it. You know, the journey of the author going through there, as I said, as you construct your thoughts, you're forced at many points to challenge a lot of your own assumptions because you're structuring them in words that other people will read. And it's actually a journey of self-discovery. It could actually change you in a very positive way that no other endeavor might. So it's not just the kind of important work of keeping history, but it's really a self-development path that forges you in a way that's been unique in my life. So that's another encouragement, perhaps.
Yeah, it's cool.
It also
But John,
forces you.
you're a writer. You live for a writer, John. You've lived basically since you left home. You had the gift, and you've been doing it all your life. But you're unique, John, because not only have you been writing about Australian culture like at the forefront, but you've seen it change, and I think you've done stories to try stop it. So what is it you think that's driving this change, John? That reason can't stop it. Common sense, reason. Nothing seems to stop it. It just continues to roll out.
Well, if you read that book by Hannah Arendt, the Origins of Totalitarianism, that totalitarianism is a part of the human psyche or the tribe. That it's a drift within humans themselves to these totalitarian places, and what we're looking at is a digital enablement of totalitarianism. This guy, and it's, I don't know, it's the Hollywood factor. So few of our writers get any recognition or get, apart from the News Limited and Fairfax and ABC, which are all government manipulated or government owned even, and they're manipulated through the advertising budgets mostly. And also through the Mockingbird 2.0, as they're now calling it, having personnel on the actual news floors. It was always well known that News Limited have very close links to the security agencies. If you look at the last weekend's paper, for instance, all in one way or another, almost all the commentary is linked in some way or other to government operatives. And that really, on a really contentious or tendentious issue like terror, they feel that that's the government has a safe conduit to calm things down, but they're not calming things down because they don't understand the electorate. There was a great series, basically, that the army and the military always knew that the enemy number one was a journalist, that they were far and above, someone we were at war with. The number one enemy of the country was a journalist, and so that was just a mindset within military and senior military ranks and agencies that it had to be controlled. It comes from a kind of command and control instinct. You were in the army, Paul. You would know all this stuff. Does that echo you?
So I think you're describing leverage there, because the effect of a journalist is they can magnify or leverage information, so there's one single point that can have multiple outcomes. It's not just
it's not easy to control if they don't control the outlet itself. So News Limited, of course, is reliant on government advertising, and there's a good reason why News Limited never went after vaccines and only went after lockdowns, because lockdowns was an easy way to wedge the Labor, and the vaccines, their company is directly, their holding company is intimately involved in the manufacture of vaccines. So, they're never going to go after it. You're not going to get that. You're never going to get a critique from the ABC that runs against the government,
Well, we never saw it. We never had a debate about it anywhere.
Sorry?
We never had a debate about the COVID rollouts, on the ABC. I never heard of any where they got up and said why they shouldn't do it, why they seem to be the choir, the government's propaganda choir,
Well, they were 100%.
Astounding, yeah.
Everyone, I heard today on the radio, on the ABC radio, it comes on in the car sometimes, they used the word safe and effective, and in the same sentence, and there's a lot of disinformation out there, and they were talking about measles vaccines, but, they used the phrase safe and effective, one of the single most discredited phrases in the world. It's well known that it was one of the world's greatest medical scandal, safe and effective. Yeah. It's as big a lie as cheap and effective, cheap and reliable. It's just a ridiculous lie. And people have been so blatantly lied to for so long. Who knows that, there's over 1,000 kids now in Australia at any one time going through gender transition. So do we know that there's all these kids out there, underage kids, getting their dicks cut off and their breasts cut off and on all the hormones and all this insanity for an insane bit of ideology that your gender identity is fluid. But this is all going, where's the scandal? Where's the exposés? None of it.
Of the irony too, where's the expose of the complete contradiction that underage kids are allowed to make those decisions of that gravity, but are too young and fragile to watch cat videos on YouTube until they're 16.
That's right. That's beautiful.
I mean,
even to show you how powerful journalists are, look at that young journalist in America with the Somalian daycare thing. I think it's in Missouri.
Yeah.
And
what was his name
again? This one young guy. He's got just a little microphone. That's all he's got. He didn't even dress up. He's got his tank top up and he's just driving around. It could have been any of the independent journalists going around. He just got the scoop. Obviously he met that guy. That guy said, I've got a great story. He just went with it. And it's been one of the stories of last year, or it did happen this year, but it's staggering.
No, it's still going. And seeing they've been on there trying to discredit him. What's his name? Shirley. What's his name again? I could look it up. Anyway, he did what every normal journalist would have done. When they say they're mopping up billions of dollars in childcare subsidies, the Somali community, let's go and have a look at the childcare centres, and there's no kids in the childcare centres. Funny about that. And they're mopping up millions and millions of dollars. But you're a racist if you dare to point out that they're consuming millions of dollars on a blatant fraud. And of course, we know all this is going on with the NDIS. Where's the exposés on that? The government has just completely forsaken its duty to represent the interests of the public. Did anyone vote for what is it, 1.7 million new arrivals in the last couple of years? Did anyone vote for that level of mass migration? Did Albanese go to the electorate and say, I'm going to significantly alter the demography and thereby the future of this country, and it'll, you know, and explain to the public why he thought it was a good thing and why it would be good for us? No, he didn't.
Yeah.
They just
Well, another interesting thing. Sorry, John. Another interesting thing is, like, we've done a lot of vaccine injury stories, and these people are getting no help, not a thing. They can't get on the NDIS. They get nothing. And yet we were in a town the other day. Here's an old guy, probably in his 70s, trans, one of those tragic-looking trans, you know, like he started like he was going to try, and in the end he couldn't be bothered, sitting there with his NDIS carer. Now, he walked in, he ordered himself, he did everything himself, fully independent. So this guy, you know, and I don't care if he's changed sex, good on you. But this guy's getting NDIS, and all these people, poor people who I meet who've got myocarditis, who are crippled in their beds, get nothing. And their families are I know there's one young guy in Sydney, Connor, that's one I wrote the play about. I think last time I saw him was a few years ago. His family was out $100,000 trying to pay for his care, and nothing was working. And the government doing. And Andrew Brigden, that politician from England who stood up and talked about in Parliament, he claims that politicians approached him, trying to get him to basically shut up, and said, "Look, we're going to ignore all the vaccine injuries for 20 years. Hopefully, that these people just die off." And so there's a callousness is off the scale in our community. The government mandated and coerced and basically bullied and forced Australians to take this thing. And they did it. A lot of them people did it because they actually thought it was the right thing to do. And now if they're injured, and lots of them are injured, I mean, it's huge. We're living in a death camp. And they're just ignored.
It's literally adding insult to injury, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And then this
and millions and millions of Australian children. That's just a scandal beyond unbelievable.
Yeah.
Even millions of
even the
children
thing that
unsafe and very poorly tested experimental.
The thing is, think of the Titanic. Think of the Titanic. Now, the Titanic is famous for one thing: the ship's going down, women and children first into the lifeboats. But in our world, we put this experimental thing into all the children. You know, I've met kids who say, you know, they're one of like 5 or 6 in the entire school of hundreds that didn't get it. So they've done it to all the kids to protect the grandparents. You know, so that's like basically the Titanic's going down now. They'd be going, get those kids and women out of the lifeboat. We've got to get the nursing home residents in there. It goes against
as we pepper spray them.
Our very nature for survival. Even cockroaches protect their friggin' young, and yet here we are. It's staggering.
So, Paul, do you believe any of the government? Sorry, Michael. Do you believe any of the government rhetoric about why we're introducing this digital ID? I really don't think it's sunk into people. And
have we met, John? Have we met? I mean, no, not at all. This is an amoral institution that time and time again has proven that it acts in self-interest and self-preservation over anything else. And so, I mean, any conclusions are downstream from that, right? We just need to evaluate it on first principles. We don't need to even go to the extent of looking at the nuances and the minutiae of the particular topic. So I think you can discredit it just on first principles, as I say. But
secondly, why are they doing it? The rationale is going to, prevent fraud and
the same as the Australia card stuff that was debunked. Well, I maintain that, you know, part of my thesis in the book is that human identity is one of the most valuable commodities there is. And I use the example, you know, when you buy those home security systems, you know, from Bunnings or JB or whatever, and you open it up and you usually get a little instruction pamphlet that says how to best position your cameras. Now, they don't say position your cameras out at the letterbox or, you know, in the backyard at the fence. It's typically they're pointed at areas that are valuable, that you want to protect, your front entrance, you know, your car or whatever it is, the windows where, you know, the ingress points into the house. And surveillance at a national level works in the same way. why are all the cameras in the cities, where the population is denser, and not so much in the rural areas where there's fewer people? It's because people are the thing of value. There's value in surveilling humanity. Human beings are the bedrock of civilization. We build societies, we're innovative, we create economies. All of that is ripe for extraction and behavioral manipulation and control. So yeah, when you view it through the resource lens, through the fact that surveillance produces asymmetric power, and again, I run through some examples in the book where that's easy to see in the real world. You see prize fighters are renowned for, or poker players, they're renowned for kind of acquiring the skill of observing nuances in the opponent's behavior. So a prize fighter might review videos of their upcoming opponent's previous fights and look for tells, like, do they prefer the left hook or something? They can use that and exploit that bit of information about their identity or their behavior against them, so they can come in prepared, and that may result in prize money or accolades or something. The same principles apply at a national level. That asymmetry of power is what comes out of an asymmetry of identification. And as you said, we're sold all these lines, these kind of ornamental justifications, like safety and convenience. And I've said on many occasions on these interviews that just doesn't pass the pub test at all, because we'd be hearing about it in the street, at the gas pumps, and in the checkouts queues. I hear a lot about cost of living pressures and immigration, as you've already mentioned, and election integrity, and all those things you can easily hear out and about. I haven't heard once anyone say that the reason why their life isn't as good as it could be is because they don't get to digitally identify everywhere. It just doesn't pass the sniff test. So, and ultimately, if we're identification systems won't make the government more efficient. It won't make the government kinder. It'll make it faster. And that's a dangerous thing. That's a scary thing, actually. When going back to the beginning of this monologue, I defined what government is. It's an institution that is intent on extending its own power and exerting that power over those who don't wield it. That asymmetry, I think, is very dangerous in any healthy society, and I think that's where there's smoke, there's fire. Like I just think that it's too valuable commodity to think.
What
about
you,
otherwise.
John? Before you ask, just going to John, what do you think's behind it, John? As a experience, that was a beautiful answer, Paul.
I think it's partly that people who know they're under surveillance are better behaved. So it's like the panopticon thing, which was introduced. It was a prison system for people who don't know it. I think it was introduced in the 1700s, where you have the central tower in the prison and you can see into every cell. And they found that if people know they're being watched, they behave differently, and basically they're better behaved. And if you don't believe it, try dancing naked in your kitchen at 2 a.m., drunk, when you know somebody's watching, and naked in your kitchen at 2 a.m. when there's nobody around and you know absolutely for sure that nobody's watching. You just behave in a completely different way. And you just broaden that out.
You got parole for that, though, didn't you, John?
You're the study, mate, not me.
And John, that's the simple case. That you described there, the case where it's unambiguous what is embarrassing behavior or what isn't embarrassing behavior. So you change your behavior accordingly. When it gets really nefarious and pernicious is, again, the lived experience on the street under total identification and surveillance systems, which I brought my family history into in 1930s and 1940s Germany there, where even if you on the books complied with everything that you thought you could comply with, the feeling was still one of uncertainty, of fear, because you woke up every day and you were an Aryan, you were whatever the conditions were. You never were quite sure if you met today's condition for arrest, because not only would the rules change a lot, but they were loosely and arbitrarily enforced by police on the street. So you have that difficult case where it's often not even possible to know how to behave to appease the beast. And just the surveillance means this is the principal failure of the argument. I've got nothing to hide. How do you know what you need to hide? Because ultimately there's something that you do every day that you think is innocuous. That's I walk to my I might drive my car between 11 and 12, or I might put milk in my coffee and not. There's an infinite number of micro behaviors that we just assume are acceptable, and the definition of acceptable may just change overnight. So at some point, everyone crosses a line where you do have something to hide, because it's fundamental to how you exist.
Can I just ask, do you believe that my fear is that this is heading to a social credit score system? This is the big step, or almost this is the tool they need for a social credit score system.
I mean, sorry, John, was that targeted at you?
I don't know.
It's you, Paul. But anyone can answer it. But I'll go with Paul first and go to John.
Yeah, either by accident or design. Yeah, and it's a very good point you raised there. Even if the intention is not to build something like that, what we're talking about with digital ID is not a single app or a website. It's infrastructure. It's like laying pipes. And once the pipes are laid, you don't get to choose what flows through them. So once we've got these systems in place, down the track, there may be a regime that comes in, or a well-meaning AI or something that goes, we can improve, by some definition of improve, the nature of our society by, assigning certain scores to certain behaviors. And that may be very well intentioned. But once the pipes are there, it just means that these things can fall out very easily. And ultimately, I think are perhaps inevitable with enough time. So intention is almost secondary, isn't it? Once the mechanism is there, then we're just down to good luck, aren't we?
What do you think, John?
I keep thinking in more science fiction kind of terms, or it's not really science fiction much anymore, is that we're moving into an era of AIs and of robotics, that they're talking that most jobs will be gone within a few years, and they're already going at a rapid rate. Do you need a musician to score your music now? Do you need a graphic artist to do some of the
voiceover artist?
Do you need an encyclopedia when you can just ask it some of the most complex questions, or just have a chat about it, or anything? You can ask anything. You can chat to Grok now, supposedly the most intelligent AI on the planet, and it's absolutely fascinating to talk to. And so a lot of the necessity, that's that whole useless eater things that the origins of totalitarianism talked about. You're basically talking about making most humans, the herd, more or less redundant. Do we need them? What do we need them for? And so you're evolving humans into genetically enhanced and cybernetically enhanced creatures who will look back on the human form that we know as very primitive, in the same way that we look back on chimps, as our descendants. And that's not that far off. The genetic manipulation, to breed hyper-intelligent humans that, are hyper fit and all the rest of it, and have all those qualities. And, just say, for instance, I think it's pretty well established that there are some, it's rare, but there are some humans that can remote view, and exactly how it's done, there's been quite a bit of research, as I understand it, remote viewing. So if you can get the gene for remote viewing and breed humans that
What's
can
remote viewing, John?
That you can see what's going on in some other place, that you would be able to see.
Wow.
And it has obvious military applications. So, which is why there's been a lot of research on it. So if it's true, for instance, that there were prophets in the Bible, here's another case, that there were some people that could see what was going to happen. It seemed to be in 400-year leaps or whatever. So if there genuinely were prophets that could see the future, that means there was a certain small percentage of the population that somehow existed, or their consciousness existed outside the normal stream of time. Now, if you could isolate that gene, you can breed humans that have the gift of prophecy. So they've now got these huge genetic banks and know the traits. Intelligence is the obvious one because it's the most easy to measure. But, it's not long before you get into breeding superhumans, and then you cybernetically enhance them with the the extraordinary abilities of the AIs now, humans are about to evolve into a completely different animal, basically. That's my guess.
I just want to challenge you on the AI thing, because I've seen another stream, another argument to this. It's in some videos I've seen. One is an old guy who's been working on computers since day dot, and he's saying that AI is a bubble. It can't actually do a lot of the things that it's saying, and this is his argument. He's saying what it is because no one knows what it's capable of. So the people trying to create it are wanting money. So they keep putting out statements. Oh, look, it can do this, and it can do this, and it can do this. And so everyone's throwing money going, oh, this is going to be huge. And the businessmen behind it are doing the same. And he says this has happened in history. It happened in the dot-com bubble. And so they just throw tons of money in. There's no one sitting there going, actually, I'm not sure it can do this. And so he thinks it's going to be a bubble that'll collapse. The AI won't go away, but this huge furor going on now will collapse. The other argument came from the CEO of IBM, and he said the infrastructure they want for AI, they'd need at least, this is just in America, 100 data centers. Now that would cost about $8 trillion. And in 5 years, they'd have to replace all of them because the chips only last for 5 years. And he said even the interest repayment on $8 trillion would be more than Microsoft, Apple, and Thing earn. So he's saying they can't actually do it. They can't generate the power they need, and they can't afford it. So it's not economically viable, and no one wants to talk about that because everyone's making so much money. So he reckons AI is just like what it's doing with you, John. You know, we're talking to Grok. I can do some music, which I never did before. And there's other things like that. It's a really good, great, fun tool. So I'm not saying they're right, but I'm saying it's really interesting to hear that point of view, because then you realize they're just frightening us. Oh, there's going to be no jobs for you. And that just brings us down, makes all our young people feel like, what's the point of living? What's the point of having families? I'm not going to be able to afford a house. I'm not going to be able to do a job because AI will do everything. But they might not be able to power it. I know they want to do electric trucks somewhere in America, and they wanted to change the whole fleet to electric. And I think the governor of the thing said you can't do that because you're going to use more power than we actually have in the grid. So I'm not sure that it's a done deal yet, and we might just be getting conned as we just continually get conned, you know? So I don't know. It's an interesting other view, you know? Have you heard about that, any of you two? Or is it
that's a problem.
Yeah,
my algorithm threw me that. So I got a talking point in an interview.
We've, like you said before, with the .com era, it's a disruptive technology, and you know, a lot of this, both sides of the argument can be true simultaneously in a way, because we might be looking at timescales here. So with any disruptive technology, you look at the transition from horseback to car, you know. Yeah. Because it's new, we don't yet know how to scale this thing, because we don't yet know what this thing is, and also we don't yet know what the impact on society will be. That's a very complex interrelated system. So we need time for it to bake in. You know, look at how the internet has changed our world. I remember people just thinking that was going to be a fad, and now we couldn't live without it. But that's taken decades, you know. So we will find solutions to a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I think we have to break these types of discussions into different pillars. And one is the technical kind of engineering component, but the other one's the social one. And they're both very important. They're both required. But yeah, you nailed it, Michael. I don't think it's going anywhere. But perhaps we are, you know, kind of passengers when it comes to determining to what extent and when and all of that stuff. John,
both of them did say in their arguments that AI will change the world, but it'll take longer and they're not as sure. So exactly what you were saying. Sorry, Paul,
we need different type of infrastructure and logistics and all sorts of things, and new jobs will come along and old ones will be made redundant, just like when the you know, the tractor came along and just about everything else that's been disruptive. And
Yeah.
but we've found a way through up to now, haven't we?
I can't play an instrument, and yet I'm selling music. I've got an album from my poetry that's selling. I can't believe it. I can't play an instrument to save my life. So my life has benefited from it. I'm asking other poets out there too. If you're a poet and you've got all these poems you never used, throw them into AI Suno. See what it does. You might actually get really surprised. It's almost like giving your poetry wings, because someone reading a poem on Facebook and someone hearing it sing like recording version is different. So I don't know. And you actually, go ahead, John.
You can ask a sort of sideline question: is how's this under 16 media ban going in Australia? Is it actually working? I don't get the impression that it's working at all. Is it working?
I know.
Is it? Are the kids staying off social media?
Did you hear what the kids do to get past it?
Oh, I've seen various things.
Because one of my friends did it. They use Albanese's face. When it asks for verification, they show a picture of Albanese's face. We didn't believe it. We'd heard that that's what they were doing. And then Tom Vogel, one of our podcasters, he got kicked off Facebook, had to verify it, and he did it. And they let him on. And then they did it again, and he did it again. He shot a really shoddy picture, and he just moved it like this and let him back on. So Albanese is the passcode to getting past censorship.
But let's be nuanced here, because that's one definition of working. And you could say that that's failed, that isn't working. But what is working is now we're all becoming conditioned to putting something in front of the camera. That is working. That's the bit we have to watch for. Yeah, not how accurate the determination is, but the checkpoint that's now put in front of a resource that was previously unobstructed. That's working.
Yeah.
Though I had to laugh at the Aussie larrikinism of those under 16s who were on the PM's socials there going, still here, bro. I just, from a cultural point of view.
I thought that showed real hope. It showed the larrikin spirit might have skipped a generation. The kids have it. So,
that was my
and
takeaway.
people keep saying the kids aren't interested. But every time I meet a young person, they're very aware of what's going on. They're very pissed off. And yeah, it's really, really interesting. I have faith in them. The most powerful interview I did was in Castlemaine with this young woman, and I asked her, what do you think of Australian culture? And she said, we don't have a culture. She goes, I wish we did. I look at other countries and wish we had it. We've just got a load of people on an island doing shit. And I thought that was profoundly sad, And then other young people have come up and said that's how they see it too. Anyway, but we're going away from the books. Just before we go, John, tell us a little bit about your books on here. We've got Terror in Australia and Australia Breaks Apart and Unfolding. All of these are working. All of these are selling.
There's 3 of them. There's actually 5 in that series, but that was in 2000. That first came out basically January 2016, basically, and almost exactly to the day, a decade on from the Bondi attack. This book was published. And it came about when I came back from living overseas for a while, and I was just shocked by the state of Australia. I mean, Asia is absolutely booming, and we come back here and there's closed car lots and drive down Parramatta roads. Everywhere is a street of despair, basically, and the defeated nature of the population. I've just been in Vietnam, and this industry everywhere you look down any street, even in the working class areas, well away from tourist areas, everywhere you look there's activity, and you think, God, 99% of this would be illegal in Australia. Everybody's selling things on the sidewalk, or, the school near where I was staying, there'd be 100 people selling pens and exercise books and breakfast every morning to the kids going to school. And that's just one enterprise. They've got sort of land ownership system there, as I understand it, where if you buy a house, that's yours and your descendants forever. They're not driven by the same market economy in real estate that we are. Anyway, I came back from living overseas, and I was just shocked by the state of the country, and it was that full on at that height of Tony Abbott and making absolute hay out of Islamic State. the Telegraph was badging their pages the deaf cult, and page after page, the deaf cult, the deaf cult. And ironically, when Islamic State was actually defeated in Iraq, I think it was on page 33 or something. It was like a very small little non-event story way at the back. That wasn't the point of that whole drumming of terror, So there's huge questions about the use by, Abbott basically gave up governing, administering the country in favour of terrifying everybody to bits over Islam. And there were very dubious questions to that. And then there were several books. There were 5 of them. I just felt absolutely compelled to write them. I don't know why. It was really bloody hard work, and it just went bang, bang, bang. And there were 5 of them in the series. The next one was called Dark, Dark Policing, which is about, the shaping the way you think through authority. And the next one was about surveillance called Hideout in the Apocalypse. And then along came after those books, because all of this was shaping long before we hit the COVID era. And then Unfolding Catastrophe was that full on, this is locked. I'm literally locked in this house. If you go out, and talk to your neighbour and someone else pulls up, that was illegal. I mean, it was just out of control what we went through. And then and when Australia Breaks Apart opens up, that was 12 million people were in lockdown in the opening scenes of that book. I mean, it was just beyond belief what happened in this country. And you couldn't, the old phrase, you couldn't make it up. But anyway, it was they're compelling stories, and they're real stories, and they're told through the eyes of a somewhat shambolic old journalist, who bears no resemblance to me.
The thing is, though, as an elder, we have this thing in society, you're old, get out of here. But in most societies, you're an elder. You've done a huge amount of work.
Oh, yeah, you're really highly respected. It was a weird thing being in Vietnam recently. It was you're respected if you're elder.
That's right. We have something in our country where we don't do that. It staggers me. I talked to one old guy in Lismore, and he was going on about how all the different ways the government could have set up the infrastructure of the water everywhere, something with the dams, that Lismore would never flood, but they just won't do it. And it was fascinating how well he knew and how much information he had, and yet he was in this car full of all his paperwork, wherever he was researching, and of course he's just ignored. So it's. I think we have such a fascinating country at the moment, because we have a community, and it's not an unjabbed community. It's a community of people who are just wanting to talk now. Like we have a guy coming on Sunday, Simon O'Rourke, Muso. He's been watching Cafe Lockdown for 5 years, and he's just started commenting, and his comments were so powerful. I said, mate, why don't you come on? So he's going to come on now. And I think bit by bit now, Australians are going to realise, you want to defend free speech, then you bloody exercise free speech. That's it. You start talking, and you don't care what happens.
It's a sense of community,
Absolutely.
We're not proud of our families or our communities or our country anymore, and people want to be proud of themselves and proud of their streets and proud of each other.
Even what Paul said about early on about the role of parents, because the way the Victorian have come in now, they've got a new transgender thing now with the kids in school. The kids don't have to tell their parents. The teachers don't have to tell their parents. Basically, once the teacher decides that this is a mature age child, and if the child wants to start transitioning, the child can start it, and the parents are not involved. And if they get involved, they have a trouble, they can be removed. So this is insane stuff. I mean, it's so insane that I don't think people can believe it's real. That can't be happening in our country, but it is. It's happening in our country now. I saw a young guy doing a post about it, and I was just listening. This can't. How did this get past Parliament? All the politicians looked at what he said and said, "Yeah, I agree with this." All of them. There wasn't anyone who said this is insane. Fathers all across the country. So many fathers actually feel like they're like a museum piece, a novelty item to have in the house. You can be the father, but You do one thing wrong, you give your kid a smack, or you yell too loud, and bang, DVR, you're out of the house, man. And the society tells you, we kept you for symbolic reasons, but you actually have no power as a father. I've met fathers who told me their kids have said, I don't have to do anything you say. You're not my father, only by name, because the school has taught them that, and so
boy.
then this is powerful shit. You wait as a young father, you wait till they go to school, one thing out the way, bang. We had
This government has introduced some of the most appalling family law legislation imaginable. It's just like the father has absolutely no hope of gaining custody of their children, and is just regarded as a perpetrator.
Look at the comment. My kids are suffering. And
My
so
kids
if
are
you're out there and
suffering,
you've been through the court
We're going to
system,
do
I know it's very hard. If you've been
war
through
on
the
our
court
children,
system,
look at
John's
that.
got a great book about it. But write about that. Write about our country is sort of collapsing around us, and it seems to be.
Yeah, we're going to do this interview. I might plug the interview, can I, Michael?
Yeah, go.
on
But
some
write
price.
about it. Write about it. Write about it in books, and let's start creating literature. Who knows? It could actually become very powerful. So to point the.
So we haven't got the date yet. Are you running out of time?
No,
we haven't set the date yet, but we're going to interview Sue Price, who runs a men's rights agency, and I sat up there at her house because I couldn't bear sitting here and writing it. And the book's called Failure: Family Law Reform Australia, and it's a really detailed look at the history. 2025 was the 50th anniversary of the Family Law Act of Australia, and it nearly killed me writing that book. But she's a really interesting character, and she's 80 now.
Yeah,
she's the far. They describe her as the far right figurehead of the men's rights movement, and she's an 80-year-old woman in a wheelchair, recently bereaved, with a heart of gold, and she's the so-called right winger, And it's just this is how insane the whole thing has got, and she's a really interesting figure, and we really need to interview these people before they pass on.
Well, let's get her on next week. It'll have to be online, but let's get her on next week. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
There's yeah. But anyway, just to say, so this is what we're doing, and it's the start of the year, January 2026 is going to probably be a tough year. The world, we're calling it the nonsense war. The world is just, it's every day you just wake up and go, ugh, and they are erasing history. They want their history gone. And this is why we think books are so important. And this is a new way to do it, because if the publishers aren't going to publish us, and you can publish us, and you can publish it yourself on Amazon or Ingram Spark is what John uses. You can buy you can buy author copies much cheaper, and then that's your product that you sell, and we can help market that, get you on, tell us about what you've written about, what's it in, if it's good enough to publish, and then we'll market it for you. And so it's not the publishing now, it's the marketing. You're in a platform where people want to hear this stuff and do it. And it's a way to fight back. Let's, if our history is under attack, then it's time to cement it. But we were here, so in the future people look back and go, resistance.
Almost all publishing in Australia is pretty anodyne. You've either got all the government stuff that are coming out of the tertiary publishing institutions. That's all government funded or comes off grants or so on. So it's all very safe, very government funded, and very boring and very non-confrontational. Or it's very safe. It's either the bookshops have all got Stephen King and the big sellers, or the outback romances and so on. It's basically only Australian content.
That's true.
So, yeah, you've either got the blockbusters or you've got the
or sports stars.
Oh, yeah, sports stars. Bird books do well. So if you're an ornithologist out there and you've got a bird book, you've got a good chance of getting a mainstream publisher. But otherwise, basically zero chance.
But what I love, though, is at the moment people are buying them, and I think they're buying them because they realize it's important. So people. Like, they're buying 4 books at a time. That's the most we had, a 4-book sale. We've had several 3-book sales where people are buying, and we haven't even marketed it much. It's just through here, and people are seeing the importance of it. And other authors, Liz Gunn and Barry Young, who from New Zealand, the guy who released the data, he's now considering doing it. And so even if they don't come with us, it's just promoting people. The internet is going to be compromised. It's time to
cement our history, as you say.
Yeah, cement our history. I knew it was a C word.
Yeah.
And but yeah, and here's where we are. And there's other things too. I think if we go forward into this year, we are this incredibly strange but powerful community that is yet to give itself an identity. We call ourselves, they call us anti-vaxxers, sovereign citizens, all this, but we haven't given ourselves an identity. We're freedom fighters, but we're not really fighting for freedom anymore. We're not out there punching on and breaking glasses. It's like that boring pit where we're not sure what to do. Well, now is the time to give ourselves an identity, because when you've got an identity, you'll fight for it. And that's what you said, they're after our identity, Paul. And one beautiful thing about our community that I love is you can be an individual in it. You don't have to think like us.
I got a short...
Basically...
So I was just going to say, if you'll indulge me, I got a short story on that. It both illustrates the power of books that you've been talking about. It also goes back to your comment before about that young man in Lismore, was it, who said, we don't have a society, we don't know who we are, words to that effect.
Yeah, and that's right.
I'm always reminded of a passage in the book Tobruk by Peter Fitzsimmons. He's the history that's recorded in Peter's books is remarkable, the Australian history. And there's one little snippet in that very thick book that I think will gift people at the moment, at this time we're living through in this country, an idea of who we at least were and who I think we still are under the surface. So if you'll indulge me, it's just everything in one. I love this story. It was
go ahead.
Lieutenant General Sir Leslie Morshead, who was the famous commander of the troops at Tobruk, and under his leadership, and he, by the way, was a humble Sydney school teacher, and yet he was the one who was the first in the world to defeat Rommel's Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg had destroyed Europe. It was being used effectively in Africa, and it was Aussie. It was an Aussie out-of-the-box thinking and a refusal to lay down against a heavy tyrant that effectively cracked that. But these are national stories. I also want to focus on the rubber meets the road stuff. And 3 days before Rommel's invasion or original attack at Tobruk, 3 days before, there were Aussies from the 224th Battalion under the newly formed 9th Division. They were kind of ragtag. They were brand new. They were kind of half-armed, half-trained Aussies, and they're there digging defensive trenches. And they're shirtless and they're sweating and they're just doing the work. And they're there with Brits, right? And this one day, 3 days before the attack, this British artillery officer comes out, and he's just the epitome of a British artillery officer. He's got his Sam Brown and his beautifully polished boots, and he's got his adjutant in tow, and he comes along to inspect the Aussie troops here. Now, these are Aussies under Australian command, and they didn't give a damn that some British officer was there. They were just digging trenches because the work needed doing. And eventually this captain, he was a British captain, couldn't take it anymore. And he walks up to one of these shirtless diggers and clears his throat and says, "I've heard you Australians are a rather undisciplined bunch, but surely you know enough to salute an officer." And this digger stops digging, surveys this captain up and down, leans on his shovel, and then turns around and grabs his shirt, puts his shirt on, buttons up the buttons, tucks the shirt in, and turns around for the first time, revealing his epaulets and the fact that he was a major. And the blood just drained from this captain's face. And this Aussie major said, "As you can see, Captain, I'm a major. And what's more, I'm the commanding officer of these men. And I tell you, they don't even salute me, let alone you. So since I outrank you, you can stand to attention and salute me." And, this captain snapped off this textbook salute and kind of, again, pale-faced. And the Aussie major just looked at him and dismissed him by saying, "Now piss off." And then he took his shirt off, turned around, and got back to digging. That's what this nation was born on, a rejection of hierarchy and power. When there's problems that need to be solved, we do it on the ground, and we do it to a world-class standard. Yeah. So, for those out there who are younger and maybe have been a bit disconnected from that history, it's absolutely worth reconnecting with, and it's something that I think is an opportunity to carry forward, you know. And that was 1941, and that tale went through the battalion for months, and it's still being told decades later here on the internet on a live stream. So that's who we are as a nation. I think we've identity on that. We're going back to it, and books are the perfect medium to carry those sorts of stories.
Yeah. Stories. That's the thing. Stories. Yuval Harari says it. He says Israel is just rocks. The only thing that makes Israel and Palestine, why they fight over it, is the stories. And so literally we could be going into an era of conflicting stories. Their stories, they're safe and effective, and how we're all going to benefit by having cameras up our ass. And our stories where we're defending our rights to be human beings. Absolutely, standalone.
And that's what makes your book, Goodbye Road, Australia's Broken Heartland, so powerful. It's the stories in it. And they're just very ordinary stories. No, some of those stories are absolutely fantastic, Michael. It's a great book. It was a privilege to get involved with it. And, it was just a fantastic book. Really good. I was really proud of the way it came out. I just thought it looked great.
Man.
It read beautifully. Yeah. It looked fantastic, and it was a really significant contribution to
that reminds me.
Piece of contemporary history, which no one else in the country has done. So I think now I'm giving you a plug, but it's a great book.
Yeah, that's cool.
A well-deserved one.
Goodbye Road, Australia's Broken Heartlands.
Just got this thing Paul. Here. Did I?
I just said it.
Look, this is it. I'm just going to show you this, John. I meant to show you. So that was the sign. That's a better picture. So that's the sign I took that's where I got pepper sprayed after that. And it's extraordinary. The violence of the police against this was extraordinary. Right. But I just end on a little. Yeah. Actually, I won't do that. But it's just thank you for coming on. We're going to get John on again with another author, and Paul has got another book coming on. Thanks to everyone who's bought the books, and we're just starting out. We're just seeing where it works and supporting these authors. And I love it when I send something off to Paul and go, "Hey, we got another sale. Yeah, hey, John, we've sold 2 of your things."
Yeah, it's fun. I posted 3 today. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
it's great.
That's right.
It's great.
And so this is what we're doing. This is basically everything. My thinking now is long-term thinking. We're going to recreate our identity. It's going to take long. I think Paul Lasig, who is in Melbourne, he's a great thinker. He says what we need is a cultural revolution. We all know the Australia we want. We've just got to sand off all this woke shit and all this other bureaucratic bullshit and get back to get back to that major in that trench. The country's in trouble. It's time to start working. We got to get back to him and get rid of And so this is what we're doing, but we need to know who we are, and it's changing. I mean, you go on the Nullarbor, and it's where I'm heading soon. And I remember I went in there one of my last trips across. You go into a roadhouse. Now, usually a roadhouse is chips, cooling hamburgers and stuff like this. This one was just full of Indian food because the main customers are the Indian drivers. So they've got Indian music playing and the whole thing smells of curry. And I don't even have an issue with that. I just love Australia changing. And I talked to 2 guys who didn't want to be interviewed, 2 Sikhs, and they were telling me that they were from New Delhi. And the difference where in New Delhi, where you've got a face like everywhere you look, there's a face, to traveling across the Nullarbor in their turbans and this big truck and just so much space. There's nothing. It must be quite an extraordinary turn of events. You know what I mean? So who are we now? And one way to find out who we are now is to get out there and see. Like the other thing too is like they're going on about anti-Semitism. I might finish on this for me. Albanese is going, the rise of anti-Semitism, I've been 5 years on the road. I don't see Nazi flags anywhere. I don't see Nazi swastikas driven anywhere. I don't see anyone dragging Jews into the street. I don't see any of that. I don't see any of that. So I don't know what he's talking about. I know he's talking about the Bondi thing, but they're talking about everywhere, like that caravan incident. But that caravan incident was a setup. So it's all, we're just being lied to and lied to and lied to. It's quite extraordinary that they don't even seem to care that they're lying anymore, because the people are so broken. They're just going, yeah, whatever, you know? Yeah.
He's
Anyway,
smearing the
that
entire population, and it's just outrageous. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so it's time to fight back. Don't stop waiting for the white hats. Don't think any politician is going to suddenly, they got rid of the good ones. So don't think any politician is suddenly going to stand around and remember he's patriotic. It's time to fight. And it's a time to fight. You've got children, Paul. We've all got children. What do you want to leave to your kids? Do you really just want to leave bricked up air that you've paid off and they can use it to buy a house? Or do you actually want to live a culture that they would find it worth fighting for themselves? This is where we are. This is this moment in history now. Our country, we could go this way or this way. It's up to us. No white hats, no anyone else. I mean, I was hoping Trump might abduct Albo, but, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of commentary on his side, Twitter side about, why couldn't you just come and take an Albo?
Yeah.
Please take him. We'll give him to you. We'll hand him over for you.
Yeah. We'll even show you where he is. He's there. Look. Just follow the booze. You'll find him. Just follow the booze. There he'll be. Anyway, thanks for coming on.
Keep an eye out for.
Pleasure.
I just want to thank you, Paul, for trialing it with us. You were the first one to come on board and see whether the concept will work. We're not selling millions, but it is working. So thanks for coming on. I'm looking forward to your second book. And John, it's a pleasure to work with you, John. It's just a pleasure, man. I think you're a treasure. I think you're an unrealized treasure in this. I've actually loved being on tonight, just listening to you being a journalist. It is so effing refreshing. So I look forward to doing another show with you with this woman. Let's do it next week. We're going to go with the song we started with.
Men's Rice.
Sue's right.
Family
great. I'm going to go with the song we started with. This is from Sigmund. He's got one of those
not
silly.
Sigmund Freud.
No, Sigmund Freud. I'll put it up. I'll find it somewhere. It's in the thing. Sigmund Torbert. Gorgeous guy. Met him in Sydney. And he actually wrote, this is really funny, when they had The Voice, they created a song for The Voice. Johnny Farnham sung it. And all the news people were going, where's the no for it? There's no song. There's no song. Well, he actually wrote the no song with a very famous musician, and they wouldn't play it anywhere. So what we did is we got their video of their voice, removed the soundtrack, and put on his soundtrack. And we played that on one of our shows, just to be assholes. All right. This is, I can't remember what the song is, something, The Gatekeeper. So good night, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow with, what's that name? What's the second name? B. Winfield, who's from WA, who's now selling bee-free honey. So the bee is traveling. See you tomorrow, guys.
It's Luke Skytalker here.
We lived in freedom beneath the southern sky. Spoke our minds and asked the reason why. But now they demand, prove who you are. They call it safety, but they've gone too far. For every click, a record's made, a profile built, a voice betrayed. There go Australia. Oh, the gatekeeper screen is bright, but behind the machine they steal our rights. Your name, your age, your every stand in Australia, where freedom's now banned. Freedom's banned. Freedom's banned. feels all safe, but this brutal path leads to the darkest place. A global line behind each door, counting voices, keeping score. They say protect, but they mean control. They claim your screen, they claim your soul. Fair go Australia. Oh, the gatekeeper screen is bright, but behind the light is a dark, dark night. Your thoughts are tagged, your speech is scanned. In Australia, where freedom's now banned. Mama, I can't log in. Papa, they said I'm too young to begin. Mama, freedom's fading fast. They've locked the gate and wiped our past. Fair go Australia. I see a little silhouette on the screen. Government global scheme ID in between facial scan and thunder. Very, very frightening me. I see Peter very city. Luke Skywalker, will you fight for liberty? Yes, I will. Yes, he will. Stand tall, stand free. There go Australia. There go Australia. Rise before the ID gate falls. Stand for access, stand for all. From the outback plains to Parliament's Hall, freedom's voice must not fall. There go Australia. The truth must call. Don't trade your voice for a promise of peace. Freedom, once lost, is never easily released. Keep the gate open. Keep the gate open.